My name is Debra Ruh. I'm the CEO of Ruh Global Impact, and Ruh Global Impact is a for-profit social enterprise that works with corporations and governments and entities all over the world to make sure that people with disabilities are being included meaningfully. Also, I live in Virginia. I'm originally from Florida, but I relocated to Virginia with my family. I am a woman that is neurodiverse. I have ADHD. I'll do a quick visual description. I'm a Caucasian woman, white woman, older, mature woman with gray, silver, and white hair and with purple streaks in it. And I'm a woman over a certain age. I don't usually tell my age, and I'll say why, because we have ageism problems that happen in the world too. And I don't like people assuming I am not able to contribute because I'm now this magical age of 65. Instead, I want people to realize that I'm healthy, I'm motivated, I got a long time to go, and I want us to stop also discriminating each other because we're over a certain age. So, and very proud to be on this podcast. Thank you for inviting me. So just telling you a little bit about myself. I have been in the field, the accessibility inclusion field, since 2000. I might say that since my daughter was born in 1987, I've been in the disability inclusion field since my daughter was born with Down syndrome. And all of my friends, instead of being so happy about me having this perfect, beautiful baby girl, were looking at it like somehow my life had become a tragedy because my daughter had Down syndrome, which I disagree with. I actually think my life became a little bit more interesting and exciting. Also, my husband was hit by a car when he was 11 years old and sustained a major traumatic brain injury. And he actually died on the spot, but they brought him back to life. He was in a coma for weeks, then he was for months. It took months for him to relearn to do everything, but he grew up, he got married to me, and he had two beautiful, amazing children. But unfortunately, that childhood accident caused this major traumatic brain injury. A large part of his brain was, damaged. And so dementia came for him at an early age, and our family walked that sometimes very sad, extremely sad, but also filled with little amazing miracle moments walk. And so I'm saying that because I am the community of people with disabilities, and my work reflects that. I started Tech Access in 2000. 90% of the team were people with disabilities, most of them self-taught because society has done a terrible job of including people with disabilities, especially people with visual disabilities. And then I created Ruh Global Impact. I mentioned it already, which is a social enterprise, sort of a think tank, where we come together to say, how can we do these things better? Because so much money is spent on including people with disabilities, but the reality is it's not really getting to the people that need it. They're not seeing the benefit of the money that's being spent. So we need to do a much better job with that. But as I worked as a for-profit, deliberately as a for-profit consultant, with the majority of my employees, including myself, being people with disabilities, I wanted it to be a for-profit. I didn't want people to think, oh yeah, the only reason why she was successful was because she's a nonprofit, can raise money. No, it was because we worked really hard and because we're the best. But at the same time, as I started seeing other things happening where we were not being included as a community, I decided to create www.billion-strong.org, the world's first global identity and empowerment movement to bring the 1.3 to 1.7 billion people with disabilities together with pride. And the reality is, you bring that many people together with lived experiences that are, we all have lived experience with disabilities. They're not the same, they're different, they're unique, they're powerful. If we came together, we could hire each other, we could invest in each other, we could educate each other, we could employ each other. We are a billion strong. So it's just, I realized that all of the mission work that I've been doing for years maybe all came down to this billion strong. And I will also tell you it's billion-strong.org because I could get Billion Strong, but they wanted to pay $4,000 for it. I don't think that's a good use of money. I think money should be spent to make sure that my daughter with Down syndrome is meaningfully included, that my friends that are blind, my friends that are deaf, my friends that struggle with mental illness, we're such a big organization, community. If we really came together with pride, we could change everything for all of us. And I also want to say here that we use hashtag we are billion strong. I say it like that. We are billion strong because you need to do camel case, capitalizing the different letters so that the screen readers for people that are blind can hear you say, we are billion strong, instead of it just being gibberish. And so please use that for any disability inclusion or accessibility or social good posts. Funders, significant funders are now watching that hashtag. Ruh Global Impact was created because I had been helping corporations for many years to work on their programs to make sure that people with disabilities were being more meaningfully included. But somebody once said to me, it was Michael Tacamero from Hewlett Packard, HP, who himself was living with a very significant disability. He has passed over now, but boy, what an amazing soul Michael Tacamero was. But he once told me that he ran his accessibility and disability inclusion at HP almost like a nonprofit. And every year he had to fight for his budget, and the budget would get smaller. And I just really thought about that a lot. And I started looking at my other friends that were working in corporations and how hard they were fighting for resources inside the brand. And I thought, we've got to really talk about this from a different perspective, sort of brand inclusion or inclusion branding. And I actually am an author. I've written 3 different books. I wrote a book on social media. Please don't buy it. From 2013. It is so old. Think how old that is in social media years. But at the time, I was trying to encourage people my age to get on social media and use it, because a lot of them thought it was just about, your cat is drinking milk. It was just silly, but a lot of my generation at the time wasn't joining social media. So I wrote a book encouraging them to do that. My second book was called Human Potential at Work, where I really talked about the corporate employers all over the world that are meaningfully including people with disabilities in their workforce, and just sort of gave people a hope that we could do this. And then my last book, Inclusion Branding, was really focused on this topic of, the brands need to understand there is benefits to including people with disabilities. Certainly the obvious benefits: we're hard workers, we think diversely, we're creative, we're problem solvers, because the world isn't very accessible. You have no choice to be a problem solver. But at the same time, it was very important that all of these things be looked at in the right light and framed in a way that the corporate brand itself understood the value of including our community. So I wrote the book, Inclusion Branding, to talk to a corporate brand about why they need to make sure that we think they're a good corporate brand, why the younger people won't work for you anymore if they think you're doing wrong things. The younger generations are amazing because they're just not going to put up with it. We put up with it because, I don't know, I thought we had to. The younger generations are saying, no, if you're a bad corporate brand and you're doing things to hurt people, you're sexually abusing your employees, you're not including diverse people, well, these young, brilliant, talented people, they're not going to work for you. They're not going to work for you. So the employers still think they have all the control. No, you don't. No, you don't. The people actually have the control. And that's why, once again, I'm doing Billion Strong. But what Ruh Global was for is really almost a think tank, because there's so many brilliant people doing disability and accessibility work, but we don't always collaborate very well together. We don't really work with each other. And I think sometimes, once again, we have this lack-based thinking where it's like, if you're successful, somehow it takes something away from me, when actually you should be so happy when another group that is including people with disabilities are included, because that actually could benefit all of us, especially if we all would work and collaborate together to make sure everybody was included. So Ruh Global Impact has shifted and changed over the years and become more of a think tank. At first, we were like marketing and campaigns and branding and accessibility, but we've sort of shifted more in that we feel like we're playing more of a convening or think tank role, and bringing the leaders that are really making a difference for our community together with other people that aren't generally at the table, younger people, different from different culture, people from different cultures. A lot of people that we see not really being included in these conversations. A sad reality is the people that are talking about disability inclusion often look like me. They look like a middle-aged woman, white woman, that has to tell you I have a disability. If you're around me too much, you'll get, I got ADHD. I try to use it for good, but I have to tell you that I'm part of the disability community, as do 70 to 75, 80% of others. There's value in making sure that you are hiring and including and supporting people with visible disabilities so that we understand just by them visibly being on stage or visibly being included that disability is part of the conversation today. So I also, in my older age, am trying to make sure that I give the microphone to other people, especially younger people from different cultures with different lived experiences with disabilities, because the reality is there is not enough chairs around the table for everybody. And some of the disability leadership are acting elitism themselves. And we got to make sure that we remember who we're supporting. Who are we fighting for? I'm sorry, right now I got to fight for the younger people with lived experiences with disabilities, the older people like me as well. But we're leaving at some point in this community. We need to make sure they're ready and that the legacy has been passed on. Well, my connection with disability is pretty big. I remember when my daughter was born with Down syndrome, and I thought to myself, I don't think I've ever known anybody with a disability. And of course, as I learned and grew and understand, I realized that not only was I myself a person with a disability, but I was surrounded by it. And so that I think was interesting because I did not realize, as so many people don't, I was already part of the community. And did I want to know that I was part of the community? Well, when I did learn about my ADHD, oh gosh, things made so much more sense to me than they did before. I remember some of my smart alecky friends saying, I can't believe you didn't know. We figured it out, Deborah. But, you know, I know that we look at ADHD as a negative, but actually, I think that it has been a blessing in my life because it makes me think differently. It makes me think that I actually could pull a billion people together to join forces to empower each other. I mean, that's what ADHD does for me. It also causes anxiety and other negative things, but I think it's pretty much been a gift in my life. And so I think my lived experiences have really, really benefited my work and the passion and allowed me to really understand the world from different lenses that I never was exposed to in the past. So I'm just very proud to be part of the disability inclusion field. And now and have been for multiple years, but also focusing on aging in place. I remember once again, when I think about my age, being very open about how old I was when I was about 60. And then there was a lot of problem with people asking us what our ages are, because why is somebody asking me my age? Are they asking my age because they want to discount me? Are they asking? It's just very interesting, all of these different parts of ageism and disability inclusion. And so as I've grown in my life, I've realized that I've always been part of the community. I just didn't realize it. And I've just become more and more and more committed to bringing as many of us together as possible under the banner of We Are Billion Strong. Well, as I'm pretty passionate about disability inclusion and accessibility. I'm also very passionate about us getting AI right. I hear a lot about artificial intelligence going to kill us all. Well, actually, artificial intelligence is technology. And yes, it is sophisticated technology, deep learning and things like that. But the reality is, what I'm passionate about is helping other humans understand a few things, helping other humans understand that we are living on a living planet. And we need to care about this living planet that we are actually living on. And I am very passionate about helping the younger generations understand that some of us in the older generations do understand, and do understand why it's so important that the batons be passed, that the microphones be given to the younger people to listen to their voices. I am passionate about making sure that we value human beings, no matter what the age they are, no matter what the color of their skin, no matter if they love the person you don't think they should love. I just am passionate about rethinking humanity and helping us all work together to make the world really a better place. Not just words. There's so many words. Oh, I want to make the world a better place. Really, what are you doing then? Because you can do something as simple as put your phone down and smile at a cashier. That's helping you in the grocery store. You can be a good human being, letting another person in a car in front of you in line without flipping some kind of finger gesture or something. There are so many ways that we can actually contribute to the rebuilding, the rethinking of society right now. But what we can't do is just sit around glued to our television sets or our phones, just hoping for somebody else to fix it. That's not going to happen. We got to do it. And we got to come together with pride. And we got to show how to treat each other by actually being really kind and treating each other with respect and empowering each other. And I also think we need to all stop being so selfish and only focusing on ourselves and our families. And we got to look at the power and the opportunity of collaborating over borders, collaborating together, really allowing human beings to bloom and be who they could be. So I think there's a lot to be really passionate about right now, but I'm passionate about really trying to help the world to be a better place with action. When I first started my journey for disability inclusion, I did not think of myself as an activist. I did think of myself as an advocate, and I also thought of myself certainly as a strategist, as a consultant, or a futurist. I love that word. But the other day I did an interview at the UN in Austria, and they introduced me as an activist. And I thought, I think you've become an activist because I was always so nice to everybody, the brands, talking about a brand. I just want so much for us all to get along. And I believe you get more flies with honey. But I also am finding that as I'm getting older, I'm getting less patient. And I'm so tired of the excuses. And I'm also tired of corporations acting horribly and hurting us and and I'm tired of governments acting that way. And I'm tired of UN agencies, not all of them, but some of the UN agencies and NGOs. I'm tired of the horrible behaviors I'm seeing from leaders around the world. And so I've decided that I'm going to get a little bit more activisty. Is that a word? Activisty. Anyway, I am an activist, very proud to be an activist. And I understand things at a depth that a lot of people don't. And I've spent years and years learning these things. I've also spent years unlearning things that I thought that I knew, that I realized I was wrong. Like, are billion-trillion-dollar corporations really fighting to do the right thing by, the world? Or are they only caring about their bottom line, for example? So I'm seeing the world much differently now than I used to, but I'm also being braver and very proud to be an activist. And I hope other people will join me in being an activist, because maybe the difference between advocacy and activist is that you're being a lot more active of making sure that not only you're meaningfully included, but everybody around you are being meaningfully included. And if you're on social media or your technology, everybody around you means, people living on our planet, not just in your backyard, not just in your neighborhood. This is all of us. And so I think that I'm so passionate about trying to make more of a significant legacy change. Actually, I think that I thought that my career would look one way, and I'm realizing that after everything's said and done, I'm actually going to go in a very different direction than I realized. I thought my role was going to be partially, along with others, working with corporations and convincing them that it makes sense to society to meaningfully include people with disabilities. It makes sense to society for you to focus on AI for good and tech for all, and and to make sure you don't have barriers in your buildings, that we all can get in your building, even if we use these fabulous tools like wheelchairs or canes, or we have service animals. and I've realized I'm being too naive, and I actually have to be an activist, and I have to start really calling out what I know. And let me just tell you one thing that I know. We talk a lot about, with the disability inclusion, we talk a lot about in the disability inclusion field, we talk a lot about really being meaningfully included, and really making sure that you know, people can be included in a way that actually can add real value to their lives. But the reality is, mainly all we're doing is doing a lot of check the box. I know there are business to business organizations that will help a corporation get it, sort of an equality thing to see how good you're doing at including people with disabilities. And a lot of these programs are not very beneficial to the community that they're trying to serve. So I'm really looking forward to working with more people, more grassroots efforts to make sure that the changes that we're making are actually benefiting more of us than what we're seeing right now. What is my connection with the caregiving crisis? Oh, I have such a connection with the caregiving crisis. I mentioned earlier in the interview that my husband, he died from dementia. That takes years to die from dementia, and it's pretty horrifying. And which is very common, was his main caregiver. And I did bring in other caregivers, but it was very hard to find caregivers to come in because we pay them horribly in the United States. Oh, I'm sorry. We pay caregivers horribly throughout the world. But do understand, it's also in the United States and the UK and the developed countries. You can make more money going and making a hamburger or some tacos in the United States than you can taking care of a human being. I know that with artificial intelligence, there's hope that we can gamify loneliness, and we can just make this perfect artificial intelligent robot that's going to make all these caregiving issues go away. Well, that doesn't work. It's not going to work. We've already proven it doesn't work. I'll give you a cute little example I've used before. I should get another example, but there was a seal that was created, and it's artificial intelligence, and it was taken into nursing homes because this seal is so cool, and it would really help people that are aging in nursing homes be less lonely. Well, what they found was that is not what happened. What actually happened was the resident was playing with this artificial intelligence seal, which, by the way, I would love to play with it. As they were playing with it, other human beings were attracted to what was happening, and human beings came over and started interacting with the person that was playing with the artificial intelligence seal. So it helped with loneliness because it helped humans start engaging with each other, which is how we deal with loneliness. And so one thing that we want to see in this new world is, let's use artificial intelligence for good, but let's honor the technology that has been created to help with the caregiver crisis. But let's not think that technology is going to solve our caregiving crisis. It's not going to. We have to solve it. We have to care enough to pay caregivers a good wage where they can actually do their job and then go home and take care of their own families and their bills. We need to really, really attract people to the caregiving field that we can't attract now because they can't afford to work in the caregiving field. The one field I do not believe that artificial intelligence or technology is going to solve is caregiving field. The one field that artificial intelligence isn't going to take the jobs away from is the caregiving field, because we need humans to care for humans. And so I was so proud that I was actually able to keep my husband home during his entire walk with dementia, and it got real hard. Hospice stepped in at the end, and they were a huge gift, but the reality is caregiving is such a crisis. It is killing families. It often falls on the burden on the women, the females in the group. They cannot work. We will not pay. Some countries, like the States, will actually give money so that the caregiver, my daughter can hire her own caregiver. But the money, which is a blessing, but once again, the salaries are so low that people can't even afford to work for you. So this caregiving crisis is hurting us across the world. It's killing families. It's bankrupting and causing families to go into foreclosure in their homes in the United States. It is a raging out of control issue that we really, really, truly need to pay attention to. And I like the name of this podcast, The Rage Fund. I really think we need to be raging about what's happening with caregiving. It is awful, and we can do better. We are humans. We can do better than we're doing right now. And we've got to, if we solved the caregiving issues, which is huge, humanity would benefit in miraculous ways. It's just such an important issue. It cannot be understated enough. And there's so many people working on these caregiving issues from different perspectives. One thing I'd love to see is more of us come together. And I think that's one thing the Rage Fund is trying to do, is bring it together to talk about these really critical components of this caregiving crisis. And the crisis only got worse after COVID. It didn't get better. Long COVID is only going to make things worse. And I'm not trying to be a negative Nelly, but the reality, we've got to focus in a different way of these caregiving issues, and we got to start solving it if we really hope to move our societies forward across the world. One thing that I'll add, that once again, with the caregiving crisis, there's a lot of nuances. There's just a lot of moving parts. One of those moving parts is employment. I deal a lot with very, very talented individuals that have severe disabilities in the work that I do. Well, the dirty little terrible secret we have is that if you're a person with a significant disability that requires a caregiver, almost always, in some ways, you're pretty much going to be paying for that caregiver at least partially out of pocket. So a person with a severe disability that's working are paying at least 50 to 60%, if not more, of the salary that they make for the work they do, just for the caregiver. So a lot of very, very talented professionals with disabilities cannot meaningfully work for a lot of reasons. Some of it because they can't afford caregivers and they have to have the caregiver support. They can't afford to pay the caregivers what the caregivers deserve. There's a lack of caregivers out there because we pay them so horribly and give them no benefits and act like their jobs don't matter. And so you see like really, really talented individuals that with disabilities that miraculously have gotten jobs. They're an attorney, they're this, they're that, spending a huge bulk of their own salaries just to pay for caregivers. Other people use those salaries to pay for cars and homes and new clothes and jewelry and feeding my kids. And so the caregiver crisis is making everything so much worse for everybody, not to mention destroying families. You know, as I was walking that dementia, it was so hard. My mental health really struggled. My son's mental health, my daughter's mental health, my beautiful husband walking with it. It was everything I could do to keep it from destroying my family and to be there for my beautiful husband who deserves so much to be treated with dignity and respect. We are killing families with these crises. This is not a trivial problem. I wish the world would turn and look at it and really make it a priority to solve it because it is affecting us in every aspect of our lives. I would love for people to get involved with Billion Strong. And Billion Strong is a movement, www.billion-strong.org. And our hashtag is We Are Billion Strong. And it's a really important global movement. It's a grassroots movement. We're inviting people to be global advisors. We have over 100 countries that have joined us. Our country partners are organizations for people with disabilities, OPDs. And we have 100. We're going for every single country. We want an organization of persons with disabilities and representing. And then that organization or group, we want to encourage all of the others. There is so much work being done for disability inclusion, but a lot of us don't know what each other's doing. And also, because we don't know what each other's doing, it's easy for a lot of corruption to happen. There's a lot of corruption. There's a lot of sexual abuse, a lot of sad things happening in our community. Caregivers, those issues follow right up into that as well. Caregivers, sexual issues, things like that. And so I believe we should come together. Please come together. Please join this free movement at www.billion-strong.org. Follow our hashtag. Join our hashtag. Use our hashtag. If you're a person like me over a certain age, aging is such an important part of this. And according to AARP, the American Association of Retired Persons in the United States, a huge agency that protects people over the age of 55, 67% of their members have disabilities. 67%, which means they are us. Okay. As we age, you probably are going to age into disabilities if you haven't already. It's not a threat. Something beautiful about being a biological human being and a spiritual entity at the same time. So, please join this global movement. We need you so bad. We need funding. We need to know who you are. We need bloggers. We need bloggers. There's so much we've planned with this global movement, but we are Billion Strong, and we would be honored for you to join us. Join us as a global advisor. Join us as a country partner. But it's not the only amazing program that's out there. There's so many other great ones trying to make a difference, but it's one of them that we're trying to come together to highlight what others are doing so that we all can benefit it. Once again, this podcast that I'm doing right now, they're really trying to make sure that they're focusing on these critical nuances of caregivers and making sure that people with disabilities can be meaningfully included. Well, where are all the others? Why don't we all get together, highlight what we're doing, work together, collaborate, support each other, and actually evolve humans?